To You, I Love Dearly. Written by Bit by Bit Studio. There was a brief delay as Chrysalis' brain processed her human friend's words before inevitably silencing her. She stared into deep space, her mind playing all the memories of her time with him. The Araria wedding, her first time hanging out with Twilight and her friends, his bright, shining smile, all of it leading up to where they were now.
What?
Chrysalis was genuinely confused. You heard me, Chrysalis. I love you. Alan smiled warmly at her.
What do you mean, you love me?
She barked aggravatingly.
How could you love me after everything I put you through? I almost erased you out of existence. I insulted you, called you the worst of names. I almost killed you and your friends for Celestia's sake. What do you mean, you love me?
Chrysalis stepped close to him.
You don't mean what you said. I know you don't, Alan.
But I do, Chrysalis. Alan chuckled, rubbing the back of his nape. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't mean it.
Then why did you say it then? How could you possibly love me after how terrible I was to you?
Tears began to flow down her face. She looked down, staring at the ground as she continued speaking. Her voice quivered, but she didn't care that her tears were falling onto the grass.
Have you forgotten what I did to your friends? To Celestia, to Cadence?
Alan reached out and took her hoof in his, smiling. He stroked her cheek with his thumb before kissing her forehead. I loved you before my memories came back. And yes, some parts of those memories may not come back right away, but I still remember being with you. And I knew then that I would never leave you. You're special to me, and I want nothing more than to be by your side until death separates us. Chrysalis looked up at him with the tear-filled eyes, reaching up to wipe them from the corner of her eye.
Stop it. You don't love me.
The words left her mouth with such force that Alan thought she might have broken something inside of her.
I tried to kill you, and I nearly destroyed you with all the magic that I had. You should hate me. I hurt the ones you care about. Why can't you get that through your head?
Chrysalis suddenly shoved him away, making him fall on his rump. She brought her hoof up, violently wiping away her tears before turning away from him. Alan stood up and brushed himself off before taking one step towards her. Chrysalis. Alan began to speak, his calm and soft voice that every pony, including her, knew him for, well composed. A genuine smile, still present, made the scene of him all the more remarkable. You once claimed that you were a monster, an incarnation of evil who didn't care about anyone except striving to rule all things, and trust me when I say, I'm well aware of how strong you are by magic. Alan continued, taking another step. But if what you said was true, why did you hold back on that attack you threw at me back at Canterlot? Alan questioned, taking another step. Chrysalis didn't respond. You could have destroyed me with the 5th or 6th or 100th time I came to visit you, but you didn't. Why didn't you, Chrysalis?
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it does.
Oh, shut up! When are you gonna let it go? So I didn't have it in me to kill you. What's the big deal? I'm not a
Chrysalis froze mid-word, but she could see the damage was done. She whipped her head at him just in time to see Alan look back at her with a warm, if a bit triumphant, grin. You're not a monster, Chrysalis. Alan said even softer than before. Some only think you are because they don't know the real you, but I do. And I'll bet if you showed them, you can make some friends. And you won't have to be alone anymore.
I'm not alone.
Chrysalis snapped back, her strained voice losing all defiance.
Not with you, anyway.
Chrysalis stopped herself, realizing where these thoughts had been coming from. She knew there had been others, but she hadn't wanted to admit them. To herself, at least. It felt too much like admitting defeat. Admitting defeat to herself and to Alan. Chrysalis turned back, around facing him, her shoulders slumped in defeat.
Why do you insist on doing this? I don't deserve to be loved like this.
She whispered, looking down. She felt Alan's large hand rest on her shoulder. Because I care about you, Chrysalis, and you're everything I could ever want. I don't know how to explain to you how happy I am to have met you.
Please, stop, Alan.
Tears started to form again in Chrysalis' eyes. Alan nodded and continued. Yes, I know my words aren't enough, but that's okay, he assured, starting towards her. I'll show you just how I feel for you. Chrysalis blinked as Alan stepped close to her. He lifted her chin upwards with his index finger, holding her gaze. He gently wiped away one of her last remaining tears with his thumb.
Wait, what are you?
She was cut off mid-word when he pressed his lips to hers. It was so sudden that Chrysalis stared at his bangs for a moment. She had been expecting some sort of hug and speech, like he always does whenever she was with him. She could pull away from this. She should break this up immediately. But she couldn't. She couldn't pull away as she was absolutely lost herself in the sudden and completely unexpected rush. Her mouth had been still before when he had kissed her, but now it was alive, and she can't help but to respond in kind. The hand at her chin clasped her cheek, and trailing a thumb across her fur, he pulls her towards him as he kisses her, and Chrysalis feels a spark of feeling up her spine. She can't help but to murmur softly against Alan's mouth in longing for the sensation. He leans back a little so that their lips part. The two studied each other briefly. Chrysalis can see her questions mirrored in his expression. What is this? These feelings are overwhelming. Is it his magic? His love? A shock to both Chrysalis and Alan, she felt something spark within her. She raised her chin and their mouths came together again, more eagerly now, almost desperate. She can taste mint and peppermint. He runs his fingers through her mane again, and he pulls her closer to him. Their kisses grow heavier and more passionate as they move towards each other. Chrysalis' heart beats faster, and she could feel herself getting lightheaded. It's a good feeling. The two will eventually separate, breathing heavily. Chrysalis rested her forehead against Alan's chest as she listened to his rapid heartbeat. She sighed contentedly as she heard his heartbeat. It was comforting to her. After a few minutes of silence and contentment, Chrysalis pulled away, looking up at Alan.
I guess you hold true to what you said.
Alan stared at her for a moment. Do you believe me now? He asked breathlessly. Chrysalis looked away.
Yes.
Silence arose through the air once more between the two, and Alan opened his mouth to say something but quickly shut it when Chrysalis spoke.
Tell me, the Grand Galloping Gala is next Thursday, correct?
Alan nodded. Uh-huh.
Well,
she glanced down at the ground.
If Princess Celestia is really all right with the matter, I'll come.
This causes a huge smile to break out across Alan's face, and she feels her cheeks flush slightly at the sight. She looks up at him and smiles. So, Alan begins rubbing the back of his neck nervously. It's a date then, right? Chrysalis' blush deepens considerably, and she can hear her own heartbeat pounding. She opens her mouth to respond, but nothing comes out. She swallows hard and tries again.
Date,
she thinks.
No, it's not a date. We're just gonna dance and socialize and have fun and...
Chrysalis stops and turns around and looks at Alan, whose eyes were shining brightly as he awaited her reply. Oh, who was she kidding? She knew she was just talking out of her butt. She, without even realizing it or having to say it, just admitted she cared for him. She loved him. All due to one smile that brightened up her whole world. She fell in love with him and she's still in love with him now. After another moment of silence passed, she finally found her voice.
Yes, it will be.
There we go. A nice little short one out today, working on another nose, so hey, romance with romance. You love to see it. What I also love are my wonderful donators. Thank you Chasely Master, HKH4 aka Texture, Triss, The Animated Ghost, Mark the Wolf, and of course a large thank you to Silent Titan. You guys are amazing, and I appreciate your support so much. Anyways, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.